Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Out front tonight, the breaking news. The coronavirus hits another cruise ship. The CDC now working with officials in California after discovering another cruise ship with confirmed cases of the virus. That ship, called the Grand Princess, now getting ready to dock in San Francisco. Coronavirus cases were traced back to the ship's previous voyage. All right. Now, this comes as the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the United States stands at 157. It has been rising through the day. It's up 54% in the past 2 days, an increase in part due to more testing. And we are seeing growing numbers around the world. In France, the number of cases spiked from 73 to 285 in 1 day. Now, officials in California are also tonight confirming another death, which brings the death toll in the United States to 11. It is serious. And yet President Trump continues to have people question his credibility when it comes to his response. Here's something he said today.
The Obama administration made a decision on testing that turned out to be very detrimental to what we're doing. And we undid that decision a few days ago so that the testing can take place in a much more accurate and rapid fashion.
The problem with all of that is it's not true from everything we understand. An aide to Republican Senator Lamar Alexander tells CNN that the Obama administration never made a change to rules regarding testing. Now, at times like these, it is imperative that the president be explicit, specific, and accurate. One could use the word honest. Caitlin Collins is out front live outside the White House. So, Caitlin, now the president made that claim, which isn't true, and the White House is not even explaining what the president meant or why he said this tonight?
No, we reached out to them multiple times as we were looking into this, trying to figure out what rule it is, what decision it was that the president was talking about. And when we finally went back to them and said there was no Obama-era decision about this, they have not given us any kind of a statement yet about why it is that the president made this claim. And then, of course, he later relied on the vice president and the CDC commissioner to try to really back him up on what exactly he was saying when reporters asked him for clarification. But yes, we are being told tonight that there was no change like this made. Now, during the Obama administration, they did propose a rule that would essentially give the Food and Drug Administration more oversight over this diagnostic testing that's happening at labs. But Aaron, we are told by a Republican senator's office and a lab association that that rule was never finalized. It never happened. And therefore, what the president said today, saying he undid this Obama decision, just simply is not true. So this did not happen. This is not the reason for these hampered efforts of this testing that you've seen nationwide, with local officials raising concerns about their ability to test people. It's really become a focal point in the administration's response to coronavirus. And Aaron, it really comes under increasing scrutiny tonight because this comes at a time when the when the Trump administration and this White House is really trying to put their best foot forward here, trying to say, hey, yes, we are adequately prepared to handle this, because they've been facing some criticism from critics and Democrats alike over their handling of it so far. And it just comes at a time when now the president is putting false information out there, trying to say it's the Obama administration for the reason why they had been hampered in those efforts, when that just simply is not the case.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. And I want to go out front now to Democratic Congressman Lou Correa. He sits on the House Homeland Security Committee, and he called for his committee's coronavirus hearing today. Also attended a coronavirus briefing from Vice President Mike Pence today. So, Congressman, what did Vice President Pence say in your briefing today?
Well, let me start at the beginning, which is this issue should have never been politicized. It should be dealt with by the health officials, by scientists, and not be made a political issue. Stop the blame game. Get down to fixing the problem. This issue, coronavirus, started in China in December. What month are we on? We're in early March. And now we're finally beginning to say this is an issue. Don't blame Obama. Don't say it's a Democratic hoax. Address it and call it for what it is. This is the new norm in the United States. A little disease that started in China a few months back is now at our doorstep. And it'll continue to happen. So, first step, and I'm glad Vice President Pence was there to say, I'm taking control, surrounded by scientists, healthcare officials. That's what you're supposed to do. Vice President, control the bureaucracy in this country. And number two, stick to the scientists. And do not cut funding.
When he briefed you today, your colleague David Cicilline, he says that Pence recognized that, Cicilline described it as, quote, mistakes made early in the process with flawed testing as an example. Did you feel Vice President Pence acknowledged there were mistakes, and did you feel that he is truly in control and doing the right thing now?
I think we're going in the right direction. I think by him saying, I'm in control, surrounded by scientists, not yes people, not political people, not spin people, but scientists, is the right move. We're investing $8 billion when just a few weeks ago we were cutting Ebola virus research to shift to corona. That is not the way to do it. Long term, we owe it to the public, to our people, to the United States, to make sure that we are ready to address these issues long term, short term, and be ready to be honest with the public.
So President Trump today talked about how his administration has reacted. Obviously, he referenced something that was not true about President Obama and testing, but he also said this. Let me play it for you, sir.
We closed the border, as you know, very, very early to the troubled areas, and that saved a lot of lives. A lot of countries are having a big problem, bigger than what we have, frankly. But we closed those borders very early against the advice of a lot of professionals, and we turned out to be right. Took a lot of heat for that.
He didn't exactly close the borders, Congressman, but he did restrict travel early on by people who had visited China, foreign nationals specifically. Was he right to do that?
I think we need to coordinate with China and other countries around the world, because closing a border, stopping a flight is not going to be the answer. Coronavirus has a 1 to 15-day incubation period. And most people, 80% of people that are infected, don't even know they're infected. So how are you going to stop the spread? The issue is, are you prepared as a nation, as a world, to address these issues as they come up on you? And do you have the equipment, the scientists, the research ready to go at a moment's notice? Again, December, when we knew what was happening in China, it's March. 3 months have gone by that we know of.
So
Not a good response.
United Airlines says it's cutting flights in the United States by 10%, overseas flights by 20%. That's all the way through April. And they're saying it's because of coronavirus. They're hiring, there's a hiring freeze at that company as well. What is the bigger risk right now, Congressman? The coronavirus itself or fear about the coronavirus?
I think it's both, because we don't have enough information on the coronavirus. Again, 80% of individuals that are infected don't even know it. Flu-like symptoms. And number two, you can't create a panic. Address this intelligently. Get the healthcare experts out there. We are going to try to contain this issue, try to contain the virus, because we know 20% of those cases, primarily the elder, this could be a serious problem. It could be death. So we just want to make sure that we're dealing with the facts. That is what's important. That, to me, what the Vice President did today was start to address the facts. This is not a hoax. This is not moved forward by Democrats. It's actually an issue. and it's going to happen over and over again. We need to be ready.
It is Thursday, the 5th of March of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we've had quite a exciting last 24 hours. Oh my. Had a, shall we say, a rhetorical tete-a-tete with the usual Trump brat, Trump Jungen, brown shirt stormtroopers who really since this weekend, there's a couple of them, another rotation of these entities who have somehow mysteriously joined a closed group by invite only. So I can only assume the existing Trump brats brought them in. So here in Southern Oregon, just as a reminder, we are not inundated with the live and let live, let's love each other and be good neighbors hippie commune. No, we are inundated with meth-addled, right-wing, white secessionist, Trump brat, Trump bro, Trump bully secessionists who have guns and tell you who's going to have the polite conversation. And they will always determine what is polite conversation. They can call you a faggot. They can say that you're sucking Bernie's you-know-what. They can say that you're sucking your daddy's you-know-what. They can say that you're a socialist pedophile eating baby guts. And post pictures of it through a meme generator. You can be subjected and endure all of that. They'll throw out the homophobic memes and the misogynistic memes. Call you a woman, you girly girl. Any number of things that are supposed to, I guess, rile up a 12-year-old. Well, I got to tell you, even as a 12-year-old, I realized that guys that did that kind of stuff had some real issues about themselves. Because anybody that needs to go out there and wave their dick in people's faces, well, I don't consider them to be the alpha male. Let's put it that way if we want to get into some sort of gender gradation. Even as a young kid, I realized that. So, in this latest tete-a-tete, I just brought up the fact that these two particulars were waving their dicks in everybody's face. And that got reported, and I was suspended for harassment and bullying. Even though I asked for a review, but the Fox Facebook censors determined that since I said Trump in the midst of it, and called these two dick wavers, waving their dicks, I was the bully. I was the harasser. And that is the game that we get to play now. And it is only going to get worse. Is Facebook a lost cause? Well, let me also say in this particular group, it's uncensored. So we were, it was suggested by the young admin of the group that if we report that could cause Facebook to close the whole group down if there's too many reports about a particular group. Which seems like a strategy, because when I engaged these two, I gave them fair warning, because the way they were going after me, I only did a fraction. Oh, let's remind folks also, I'm sorry. I was suspended last week by a previous rotation of Trump brats who suddenly have become activated on that particular group and began suspending people. They'd never done that before. They hadn't really posted much. Now, I can't remember what it was that this particular, what didn't call this previous one a dick waiver, was something else that dealt with Trump. But you mentioned Trump, and I think the algorithm will track you down, especially when you're reported. So back to this issue. It was suggested that if we get too many reports out of the group could be shut down. So we don't report. It's an uncensored group. So we are subjected to vile, ugly, bloody pictures from anti-abortion types. You can imagine what the anti-abortion types do when I say bloody pictures, okay? Anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, any number of things. Now, I will say that the group is also great, in terms of community events, concerts. Should I say the town? Let's just say that there's a famous theater and university on this mountain, this mountain. Okay? Foothills of a mountain. In Southern Oregon, you figure it out. And so there's some great stuff in the midst of it, but because it is considered to be a liberal bastion, it is a magnet for the worst kind of right-wing BS. Now, if anyone stands up to that right-wing BS, you put a target on your back and you will be attacked relentlessly. Don't even do a fraction of response in kind. For instance, these previous two. Oh, yeah, the vague threats of violence. I'm going to kick your ass. You're a pansy. Come on. I know where I've been. I know what I'm capable of. And I really don't like to get into fights. I never did. When I was a bouncer, in all the years as a bouncer, I only had to be physical twice. Because generally, people are well behaved, and those that aren't, generally, by power and of command through voice, will heed your imposing on them to follow the rules, at least in this club. So threats of violence, I'm not going to get into a fight with anybody. What BS? You think that's going to activate me? I have to prove my manhood? I'm going to be 65 at the end of this month. I need to prove my manhood now? I think, surviving some 30-foot faces over coral might have done that. Or how about this? Being present and assisting in the birth of your son. I consider that to be the height of manhood, actually. I don't need to question whether my manhood is intact. You're going to have to try something else. You're just waving your dick, sonny. And that's enough to get me suspended by the Fox Facebook effers. Okay. I could whine and whine and whine and whine more about that. The suspension will be lifted this morning. Do I go in and actually retort in text, or will I use my own meme generator? Well, the meme generator is me. I guess I'm going to have to copy and paste and do some Photoshop. Damn it. Or I could ignore it all. But dare I? These guys right now, even though I'm not there, they still are tagging me. I tagged the previous guy, and that got me suspended because I tagged him harassment, bullying. All right. So do we report them? I would hope maybe the young admin might consider the spate of obviousness. Maybe they shouldn't be in this group. Maybe they should be kicked out, which is stupid because no one should be kicked out. It's an uncensored group. This is the game we got to play. They don't play fair. They cheat. It's the only way they can, quote, win, because that's not really winning, is it? Especially when you've roused the terrible slumbering giant. All right. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Of course, Trump has to blame Obama for this coronavirus F-up. This guy doesn't take responsibility for anything. And I got to tell you, GOP Senator Lamar Alexander, and a whole lab association. That's an association of many labs. Said Trump is lying. Well, we all know that. Except now it's going to kill people. As if it hasn't already. On the rest of the menu, the GOP hails Trump's win in Minnesota, even though he was the only one on the ballot. Biden got 3 times the votes that Trump got. But Trump was the only one on the ballot, so, he was at a distinct disadvantage. The Trump campaign is taking in lots of cash from companies profiting off the opioid epidemic. Well, of course, Trump's a mobster. And the House passed a bipartisan $8.3 billion bill to battle coronavirus so it can wither in the fever swamp of Mitch McConnell's graveyard. So it can wither in the fever swamp of Moscow Mitch McConnell's graveyard. After the break, we then move to the chef's table where Putin's cook seeks to distance himself from U.S. charges of election meddling. And I'm not talking about accusations. I'm talking about actual lawful federal charges. And Armenia charged a former defense minister with embezzlement. Wow, that virus has been going around for a while now. I wish we had a vaccine against it. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is, right there, there's the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring Patreonage helps us continue our civic duty as Resistance Radio, as the founders originally intended, probably before the Magna Carta. That's how far the founders went. And I wouldn't say the 10 Commandments. Let's not get that far, okay? Certainly the Magna Carta. But your generosity has allowed us to pay these bills. And the only way to really fly under the radar from the onslaught of right-wing attacks to try to shut us up is by paying our bills. Oh, wow, who knew? But regardless, that generosity not only helps us pay our bills, not only helps us amass the funds to get the needed machinery that we need to continue, but it also, I got to say, affirms within us that we're on the right track. So thank you. And we want to also thank our most recent Patreons. Your recurring contribution, I got to tell you, we just had, you have the fixed costs, and then you got the variable costs. So I've almost moved the fund for the needed machinery that needs to be replaced into the fixed cost ledger. And so variable costs, you never know what they're going to be. I mean, you do, but there's some that are variable that just show up like a surprise. But unlike really a big surprise, we are getting some needed work done on our homepage, and it will become even more secure. And a couple of little bugs here and there, and should be available across all platforms on Chrome, Safari, all of that, and mobile apps, and so that should be all taken care of soon. And of course, that's people have to be paid for their work. And our recent Patreons have allowed us to do that. Thank you so much. It has put a big dent in that bill. Big one. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to on Twitter at Netroots Roots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime and get that linked up on social media, except Facebook wouldn't allow me to. But you know what? We have a crew at Netroots Radio, and they can take up the slack. You think you can beat us? You're going to have to beat us from around the world, because that's where our crew resides, around the world. Follow the show on Twitter at CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, well, we ought to get right into our offerings here, because this is a curated show, supposedly. At least we get to the curated part eventually, you would hope. And this first offering is by Josh Israel out of the American Independent. The Republican National Committee this week bragged about Trump's victory in Minnesota's GOP primary Tuesday night, ignoring the fact that Trump was the only candidate on the ballot. Fueled by momentum for at Real Donald Trump's agenda, our party saw historic turnout last night in several key battleground states. The party tweeted on Wednesday. It noted specifically that Trump had received 150% more votes than he did in 2016 in North Carolina, and at least 4 times the numbers of votes as he did in the 2016 caucus in Minnesota. You know, that's the land of lakes. It is unsurprising that turnout in Minnesota's new primary was significantly higher than for the 2016 caucuses. Primaries, by design, are far more accessible and attracted much higher turnout in each of the states that switched to them for the current election. Caucuses, hardly anyone gets to vote. Primaries, everybody that can, should, and a lot do. It is also hardly shocking that Trump's numbers in 2020 would be higher than his 2016 results in the state, unlike last time. He had the advantage of having no GOP opponents on the ballot. You know, when he talks about they're rigging it against Bernie. They're rigging it against Bernie. And the whole GOP is like up in arms about what the DNC is doing to be able to field a candidate. Why do they care? You know why. He got impeached trying to keep from running against the guy that he doesn't want to run against. You figure it out. In 2016, Trump placed third in Minnesota's Republican caucuses with 24,433 votes, well behind both Marco Rubio's 41,184 and Ted Cruz coming in at a slick 33,142. The 2020 field is far less competitive. 3 well-known Republicans announced primary challenges to Trump this cycle: Bill Weld, Mark Sanford, and Joe Walsh. Wow. You would think that the guy who doesn't pay his, child support payments might lay a little bit lower than that, but apparently not. And, but only Weld remains in the race and has received no support from the larger GOP because, I don't know, are we whining about it being rigged for Trump? That's what they do. They cheat. You just expect them to. The only problem is that they project all of their worst behaviors on everybody else. If I'm doing it, everybody's doing it, and worse than me. That's how their minds work. You would almost think that there were these little spirochetes drilling little holes in their brains so that little viruses, like a coronavirus, can infect it, or something worse. Ayn Rand. Martin, also of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. I know people say grits aren't from New Orleans, but I've had the best grits in New Orleans, so I'm sorry. You don't have to go to South Carolina. Get it right there. Not, if not on the French Quarter, right off it. Donald Trump has benefited from more than $4.5 million in campaign funds linked to the deadly opioid epidemic ravaging the nation. Well, a mob boss has to get as big, a little taste. The Trump campaign and the RNC raised the funds from heirs to the Johnson & Johnson fortune, as well as Stuart Rohr, former head of Kinray, a pharmaceutical distributor. Oh, you mean a dealer. A drug dealer. According to financial contributions flagged by American Bridge, a progressive oppo research organization. Wow. I like doing research. You want to hire me? I got the time. The Johnson family and Roar donated $4,508,100 to Trump campaign efforts between late 2016 and February of 2020. Woody Johnson, a Johnson & Johnson heir, owns more than $200 million worth of stock in the company. Over the past several years, he donated $2.17 million to help Trump's campaign, including $1 million for Trump's inaugural committee. Boy, that was a boondoggle. Where did all that money go from? The mind reels trying to figure it out, doesn't it? In 2017, Trump nominated, and the Republican-led Senate subsequently approved Johnson to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom. And they love him there, don't they? No, they don't. Woody's wife, Suzanne, donated $715,000 to the RNC, and Trump's election campaign, and Betty Wold Johnson, Woody's ma, donated an additional $680,000. During the peak of the opioid epidemic, Johnson & Johnson was the leading supplier of the raw ingredients in the opioids. We saw this on Breaking Bad. The company even developed a stronger strain of opium puppies, and supplied the resulting product to Purdue Pharma to make OxyContin, the drug of choice of Rush Limbaugh. In 2019, an Oklahoma judge ordered Johnson & Johnson to pay more than $500 million in damages to the state for its role in fostering opioid dependency and for its responsibility for thousands of deaths in the state. I think maybe Johnson & Johnson is trying to get some sort of implied immunity. You would think. That's how they do it in fascist countries. In the case, the judge found that Johnson & Johnson engaged in tactics to encourage doctors to prescribe more opiates. And Johnson & Johnson denied all wrongdoing. Of course they would. Now, Rohr, who inherited pharmaceutical distributor Kinray, he's a dealer. And his father donated $944,000 to Trump re-election efforts between 2016 and early 2020. From 2006 through 2014, Kinray distributed 630 million opioid pills across the nation. Wow. You would think that might cause them to, have federal minimum sentencing standards applied to them. You would think. I think this is a little bit more than just personal use. 630 million opioid pills. While distributors like Kinray failed to alert the DEA of suspicious order activity, they end up facilitating the illegal sale and distribution of highly addictive opioids, Preet Bharara said at the time. And so they were charged and forced to pay $10 million in a civil penalty for its role. In his 2020 State of the Union address, Trump claimed credit for a reduction in deaths from opioid overdoses, but Fox reported that the credit should go largely toward policies implemented in the Obama administration. In January, the Trump administration failed to renew the declaration that the opioid epidemic was a public health emergency for more than a week, blaming the lapse on a clerical error. For years, Donald Trump has failed to take the opioid epidemic seriously, and now it looks like he's just given up. Kyle Morris, spokesperson for American Bridge, said in a statement, "Thousands are dying due to this crisis every year," he added, asking if Trump will ever put the country's interests ahead of his campaign. Here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way by the Associated Press. The Democratic-controlled House passed an $8.3 billion measure to battle the coronavirus outbreak that's spreading rapidly and threatening a major shock to the economy and disruptions to everyday life in the U.S., sort of like death. The swift and sweeping bipartisan vote on Wednesday was a relative rarity in a polarized Washington and came just 9 days after Trump outlined a $2.5 billion plan that both Trump's GOP allies and Democratic critics says was insufficient. The 415-2 vote came after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi beat a tactical retreat on vaccine price guarantees and followed a debate that lasted only a few minutes. The Senate is likely to pass the measure today, do you think? Do you really think? And send it to the White House for Trump's signature. Do you think he's really going to sign it? The legislation came together in a little more than a week and more than triples Trump's request, sped along by fears of the outbreak's growing threat. Well, Trump doesn't want you to know that. Trump is sure to sign the measure, which is a blessing of top Republicans like Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. Oh, really? You know how you can tell they're a family now, don't you? The agreement came together after Pelosi dropped a demand opposed by Republicans and the drug industry to guarantee that any vaccines and drug treatments developed with government-backed research but manufactured by drug companies be offered at affordable prices. Pelosi opted to avoid a confrontation that could have delayed the legislation's path through Congress. In other words, the drug dealers need to get paid at the expense of your grandma's health and her life. You better pay them or Grandma Millie dies. All right, that brings us to our break. Oh my God, it does. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, a Me Too day at the office. In the powerful but understated The Assistant, we get a look at a Weinstein-esque web of abuse far different from that in Bombshell or The Loudest Voice. There are no sex scenes or humiliated women commiserating. What we have is an assistant, Jane, played by Julia Garner from the Netflix series Ozark, beginning a day before dawn at an office, making coffee, fixing the copier, etc., all in the hopes of one day getting a shot at producing from the connected entertainment mogul who runs the company. She moves about her day amidst printer noises and off-camera conversations, which gradually become foreground. She finds a piece of jewelry in the boss's office, engages with his wife on the phone, then with the boss about how she engaged with the wife. Then there are frat boys, plus a couple of years, who work in the office, listen in on phone calls, giggle, and give her borderline-to-meaning advice on ways to placate the big guy. Eventually, she's expected to onboard a second assistant, 18 years old and from South Dakota, and who's being housed at a 5-star hotel where the boss is known to take meetings. This causes her to go to see the HR manager, played by Matthew McFadden, who explains things with the same attitude he brings off in HBO's Succession. The published credits contain sort of a spoiler. There's no potentially oxygen-sucking male character as the boss, just a phone voice, a pivotal and bold decision from director Kitty Green that transforms the movie. The assistant is a day-in-the-life picture. It covers no ground and reaches no conclusions, but as Garner's weary Jane makes her way home that night, still employed, character and audience have plenty to consider. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1770. That was the day of the Boston Massacre, when the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. But did you know that the massacre happened in part because of a dispute over jobs? In 1767, the British had passed the Townshend Revenue Act. It levied import taxes on goods such as tea, lead, paint, paper, and glass. Colonists were required to purchase these items from the British. The aim was to raise money to pay for the salaries of government officials in the colonies. The colonists resented the taxes and organized boycotts against the goods. Boston was at the heart of the dissent. In response, the British moved their soldiers into port cities to see the enforcement of the law. This angered the colonists even further. British soldiers tried to find part-time work since they earned poor wages for their service. This put the soldiers in direct competition with the tradesmen in Boston. Things came to a head when a brawl broke out between a group of colonist rope makers and British soldiers. 3 days later, about 50 colonists taunted the sentry at the custom house and pelted him with snowballs. More soldiers rushed to the scene. A soldier shot into the crowd. It's believed by accident. A volley of shots then rang out. 5 protesters fell dead. One was a rope maker by the name of Samuel Gray. Another was an African-American man named Crispus Attucks. The British attempted to appease the colonists by repealing all of the import taxes except the one on tea. But this reversal came too late. The shots had been fired that began the march to revolution. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
And then there were 3. Well, technically 4, because Tulsi Gabbard is still in the race, but there really are 3. And maybe 2. Billionaire former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg on Wednesday suspended his presidential campaign and endorsed former Vice President Joe Biden. Bloomberg spent $500 million, but lost decisively on Super Tuesday. In a surprise surge that instantly established him as, co-frontrunner with Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden won 10 of the 14 Super Tuesday primaries, bolstered by late endorsements from two other moderates, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, after they dropped out of the race. Now that Biden is again viable, Senate Republicans are sharpening their investigations involving the former vice president, his son Hunter Biden, and Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company on whose board Hunter Biden served. Committee members have gotten access to classified documents and may subpoena a former Burisma consultant. Welcome to the 2020 version of Hillary's emails. The Washington Post is reporting that top surrogates and allies of Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are discussing ways for their two camps to unite and push a common liberal agenda, with the expectation that Warren is likely to leave the presidential campaign soon. This according to two people familiar with the talks. Stay tuned. The House on Wednesday approved spending $8.3 billion to fight the coronavirus outbreak shortly after bipartisan House and Senate negotiators reached an agreement on the emergency spending package. The House passed the bill 415 to 2, the two no votes being Republicans Biggs and Buck, whoever they are. It now goes to the Senate before reaching Trump's desk for his signature. The U.S. has confirmed 150 COVID-19 infections caused by the virus across 16 states, with 11 deaths. Meanwhile, the president continues his irresponsibility tour, going on TV Tuesday night with Sean Hannity to dismiss the latest numbers offered by the World Health Organization and saying those infected can still go to work.
Report today the global death rate at 3.4% and a report that the Olympics could be delayed. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think the 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch. But based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this, because a lot of people will have this and it's very mild. They'll get better very rapidly. They don't even see a doctor. They don't even call a doctor. You never hear about those people. So you can't put them down in the category of the overall population in terms of this corona flu and or virus. So you just can't do that. So if, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work. Some of them go to work, but they get better.
He needs to just shut up. Wall Street's wild ride continues. U.S. stocks soared on Wednesday after former Vice President Joe Biden won on Super Tuesday. Investors consider Biden more pro-business. He is. No shocker here, but healthcare stocks led the gains, rebounding from losses caused by anxiety about what Sanders' Medicare for All plan would mean for the industry. United Healthcare jumped by 10%. The Dow Jones closed up nearly 1,200 points, while the S&P 500 gained 4.2% and the NASDAQ rose by 3.8%. The gains lifted the three main indexes out of correction territory. However, Dow futures dropped sharply ahead of Thursday's opening bell. The Supreme Court on Wednesday heard the first major abortion case brought before its new conservative majority. The case concerns a controversial Louisiana abortion access law that critics say would leave just one doctor in the state to perform the procedure. A similar law in Texas was struck down 4 years ago by the Supreme Court. But with the new makeup of the court, this law could be upheld. The court did appear divided after hours of oral arguments, with some saying Chief Justice John Roberts showing he may be the crack in the right-wing armor. But while justices heard arguments about the case, a rally of abortion rights supporters was taking place outside the court, where Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had a few choice words to share.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Chief Justice John Roberts said, quote, threatening statements of this sort from the highest levels of government are not only inappropriate, they are dangerous. All members of the court will continue to do their job without fear or favor from whatever quarter. end quote. I'm wondering where the Chief Justice rebuke has been for the president, who has consistently criticized and even threatened judges from the Oval Office.
Somebody said I should not criticize judges. Okay, I'll criticize judges. But I have a judge who is a hater of Donald Trump. A hater. He's a hater. His name is Gonzalo Curiel. And he is not doing the right thing. Judge has been very unfair, has not done a good job. He's been a very bad judge. He's been very unfair. And I will win the Trump University case. I already am as far as I'm concerned. But I will win the Trump University case. This is because I don't care. Because you know what? Why antagonist? Because I don't care. I have a judge who's very, very unfair. But I will say this. I think Judge Curiel should be ashamed of himself. I think it's a disgrace that he's doing this. And I look forward to going before a jury, not this judge. A jury, and we will win that trial. We will win that trial. Check it out. Moments ago, I learned that a district judge in Hawaii, part of the much overturned Ninth Circuit Court, we're in front of a very hostile judge. The judge was appointed by Barack Obama, federal judge. I mean, frankly, he should recuse himself because he's given us ruling after ruling after ruling, negative, negative, negative.
And on Thursday morning, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will address it on the Senate floor during his opening remarks. From his prepared comments, he'll say, quote, "The minority leader of the United States threatened 2 associate justices of the U.S. Supreme Court, period." Again, have you met Donald Trump? Just asking. Now, Schumer's office said Wednesday evening that the remarks were, quote, "a reference to the political price Senate Republicans will pay for putting these justices on the court, and a warning that the justices will unleash a major grassroots movement on the issue of reproductive rights against the decision." All righty then. And finally, from the creeping authoritarian files, CNN is reporting that new questions on hiring questionnaires for would-be political appointments to government agencies now contain more explicit tests of loyalty for applicants, including a question asking job seekers to explain what part of Trump's campaign message, quote, most appealed to them. Seriously. The changes were put out by ex-Trump body man John McEntee, chosen by Trump as the new head of the Presidential Personnel Office as part of McEntee's program to re-vet administration appointees, weeding out the ones seen as insufficiently loyal to Trump and replacing them with more reliable acolytes. Other questions ask applicants to list the thinkers and books that have influenced them and which, quote, political commentator is closest to their own views. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I cannot do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of 68. Sunshine and a few afternoon clouds. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at a clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour in just about an hour. Overnight lows in the mid to upper 30s. Cloudy skies overnight. Winds will be light and variable. And then tomorrow, we are expecting about a quarter inch of rain. It's actually a tad less than that, with clouds early and showers in the late morning and afternoon hours. Winds will be light and variable. Well, goody. And we also are looking for Sunday, a snowy mix, because the overnight low... Oh, I should mention also, tomorrow we will only have a high in the mid-50s, but overnight lows will plummet into the mid to low 30s. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.11 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 80%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted, these purchased. Personal weather stations. Somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 43 with rain. Paris is 52 and cloudy. Rome is 57 and fair. Kyiv is 54 and cloudy. Kabul is 43 degrees and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 61 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 45 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 72 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is a brisk 47 degrees Fahrenheit with sunny sun. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Sarah Ann Lynch of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Russian businessman dubbed Putin's cook for his close ties to Russia's president sought in a court filing yesterday, Wednesday, to distance himself and his company from accusations by American prosecutors of meddling in the 2016 U.S. election. Oh, you mean the one named in the Mueller report? The report that apparently Trump is suing the Washington Post and the New York Times over for reporting factually that Mueller found these guys to be complicit. The filing by Evgeny Prigozhin marked the first time any corporate representative for St. Petersburg-based Concord Management and Consulting, LLC, had responded directly to accusations by prosecutors that it had unlawfully defied subpoenas in a criminal case against it. Prigozhin and Concord were charged in 2018 with conspiracy to defraud the U.S. for their role in election meddling, aimed at sowing discord in the United States, helping Trump win the presidency, and harming his opponent, Hillary Clinton. Concord pleaded not guilty. Well, of course they would. Now let's take him to trial.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Armenian investigators have charged a former defense minister with embezzlement of more than $2 million in state funds. Syrian Onayan, who was the ex-Soviet Republic's defense minister from 2008 to 2016, was under investigation for squandering of state property and has been banned from leaving the country while awaiting trial. Onion is also being investigated on suspicion of acting unlawfully during the events of March 2008, when 10 people were killed in clashes between police and protesters following a disputed presidential election. Onion and his representatives were not reachable for comment, and dozens of former Armenian officials, including former President Robert Kosharan, had previously been arrested on different charges and are awaiting trial. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio's going to broadcast on, so we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.